I'm Craig Kissick, and this is how you sell without selling out. Rogers that.
Hi, everybody. I'm Rogers Healy, and welcome to Rogers That, a podcast dedicated to selling without selling out. I have a confession to make. I am a weird guy. I am eclectic. I have a knack for collecting. My mom called me a hoarder as a kid, and I said, no, Mom, I just love memories, and I never want to get rid of them. Since I was about 3 years old, I loved memorabilia. I loved things that were tangible, baseball cards, records, CDs, anything that really got me excited about that phase of my life. And as I've gotten older, I've actually gravitated even more so towards things in the memorabilia space, especially stuff that reminds me of being a kid. And our guest today reminds me a lot of myself. And what I love about him is that what he loves more than anybody else possibly could love this niche of collecting. And what I love even more is he's found a way to go and couple his passion for collecting, and I'm going to get to what he actually collects in a second, into a career. So much so to where he's been the president of said career, which gives him a different level of clout. Pop culture, sports, and music is my forte, and this guy is our own living, breathing leader, to where if Jurassic Park was to open, he would be the gatekeeper. I'm going to have to read this while looking at a teleprompter, but my buddy Craig Kissick is the former president of the Association of Applied Paleontological. I'm just going to say AAPS, and he's going to tell you what it stands for, because I can't get there. But when I collect baseball cards and records, he collects fossils, meteorites, gemstones, fine minerals, etc. And one of my favorite memories of last year when I met Craig is I was at Heritage Auctions for a meeting unrelated to anything that we're going to talk about today. But he just had a presence about him that just made you feel really comfortable and safe and welcoming, which is what I think we're called to do as leaders in this world, is just make anybody, no matter who it is, feel like they're supposed to be there. I met him, and within a half a second, he's like, hey, I recognize you. Do you want to come watch Jurassic Park on the screen? And I was like, what? That sounds awesome. I wish I could, and I can't. But so much, he was so excited and so passionate about what he did, is he gave me a tour of a moon rock. He gave me a tour of some fossils. And even if I didn't give two craps about that, I left excited because I got an ounce of his passion embedded in me, which is what I try to do every single day. So that's a long-winded intro. Ladies and gentlemen, Craig Kissick. Craig, thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me, Rogers. I appreciate it.
How was the intro?
It was pretty good. It was a little bit long, but it made me feel good.
Sorry.
No, I don't know. I'm impressed.
I had my cup of coffee, which I found out Craig doesn't drink caffeine, but I finished my cup of coffee and I gave you a 28-minute intro.
Hey, so that's all right. That's all right.
So let's kick it off here. Let's talk about what makes Craig such a unique person, where I would describe you as fascinating. And
I appreciate that.
No, for real. But let's walk a mile in your shoes and get us to where we are today.
Well, my story, and I've kind of told it before, and I actually do have a presentation that I've given at Heritage. I've given it to the pro. I call it a boy, a book, and a rock. Okay, so
a book, and a rock.
Yeah. So to go, I mean, where I am now. Okay, I'm the director of natural history for Heritage Auctions, and I am the current president of the Association of Applied Paleontological Sciences. So
there it is.
So basically, I do have a career and some serious involvement in my avocation, which is pretty amazing. But all of this actually really started when I was 9 years old. My maternal grandfather was kind of my special relative and my buddy. And, my dad helped me with a lot of stuff too, but my grandpa would take me to the Cincinnati Museum of Natural History, where I was from, and he saw that spark that you still see decades later. On my 9th birthday, he bought me a book and a rock, and he signed the book to Craig on his 9th birthday to encourage his interest in geology, Grandpa Gruber. So I had this book, and it's kind of cool. It's the Field Guide to North American Minerals. It's a Bible to people in the mineral collecting world, written by a guy named Fred Poe. Dr. Freddie was a legend. Long story short, I jump ahead, and I'm sticking with this a little bit. I went to college, and oil and gas was down when I went to school, so I majored in business, but I took geology classes every time I had an elective. So I kind of got the equivalent of having a geology degree from UT Austin, and I learned all that stuff. I had jobs coming out of school and traveled, and when my buddies were playing golf or going to bars, I was down in creeks and local towns looking for rocks and fossils and stuff like that. Stuck with it. And then in the early 90s, I met a gentleman who actually started the Discovery Store, and that actually started here in Dallas. He opened a store at the Dallas Galleria. I kind of had what I'd call at the time a little midlife crisis. And I said, I'm done with all this business stuff. I've got a finance and real estate degree from UT. You maybe don't even know that, and an MBA from SMU. So I immediately said, well, let's go sell dinosaurs. And
What year was this?
This would have been in the early 90s.
So was this at the precipice of Jurassic Park?
During the time we were doing the stores, it did open. And of course, I did demand that we shut the company down and take everybody to North Park and stand in line and see the first showing, of course. So we did that. But it was pretty amazing. So we built that company up. We ultimately sold it to the Discovery Channel, hence the sort of similarity in the name and stuff. And then I kind of danced around doing some stuff on my own, hit or miss for a while, and then this opportunity to do this big time at Heritage came to me about 10 years ago, and it just I've run with it ever since. So it really kind of tells you, though, how something seminal in your life can really put you on a different trajectory. And there are a lot of, what I love too is there's a lot of perceptual failures in that. Oh, this didn't work out, that didn't work out. But if none of that happened, I wouldn't be where I am today.
Did you feel, and again, the premise of this podcast and why you're just such a perfect guest is you're literally doing what you're meant to be doing. Did you go through a phase where you were just doing what everyone else was doing because that's what you thought you were supposed to do, where you just never had that feel good? It's like when you fall in love or you hear a song or you find a fossil or a meteorite that just feels like home. Did you go through a phase of just like, what the hell am I doing? And this is not what I'm meant to be?
Well, I kind of knew that. I was actually very briefly, and I don't even want to go into it, but very briefly out after grad school, I was working as a litigation consultant for a law firm. And you would have thought that was the dream job and the nice suits with braces and all the cool stuff and the big office downtown and everything. Hated every minute of it. I quit at 3 p.m. on a Monday, threw my security card to the security guard, drove to the Natural History Museum, stormed into the curator's office and said, what in the world do I do? And he goes, interesting education. We really, don't have a lot of jobs here at the museum. This was before the Perot and back when the Natural History Museum was down in Fair Park. And he goes, a lot of our people are volunteers. You're a young man starting out. You probably would like to make some money and build a career. And I said, okay, what do I do? He said, join the Dallas Paleontological, your favorite word for the day.
One more time?
Dallas Paleontological Society.
Paleontological.
Yes. So this is basically the weekend warriors who go out and hunt fossils. Okay. So they had a meeting down at Fair Park. And this is another one, Rogers, of those absolute seminal, magical moments. I went down there and I was wearing a suit and tie because I'd been doing other stuff during the day. We were locked out of the building. It was at the Magnolia Lounge right there as you go into the entrance. People know it from walking to go to State Fair. And this wonderfully genteel gray-haired gentleman came up to me and he said, can I help you? And I said, well, I'm here for the paleo meeting. He goes, well, are you in the right place? We're all wearing flannel shirts and driving pickup trucks and, having boxes of fossils and rocks. And I gave him the whole explanation. I said, I'm really struggling. I'm trying to find this. I've got this business background, but I really know my passion is for rocks and fossils and stuff. And what do I do? And he's actually the person, he was a retired school teacher who collected minerals. And he actually was the one who collected minerals with the guy who had started the Discovery Store. Kind of did the same thing I did. This guy who had a huge Highland Park successful accounting practice sold his mineral collection so he could start the store. So all these little things that magically happen, I know it's kind of a way to open yourself to let you be pushed in the way that fate wants to push you. I'd like to take credit for everything and say, wow, I took these big risks and I did all this stuff and I knew where I wanted to go. Not at all. I kind of but I had this, it was almost like a calling. I do feel like it's a destiny for me to be doing what I'm doing. It just took me a circuitous route and a long time to get there.
Well, so calling a timeout on that. Again, I think a lot of people, you get that call and God's talking to you and sometimes he's screaming at you, but most people get scared at the thought of actually jumping from something that's relatively secure. Right. And you took it to the point where you pretty much had your Jerry Maguire moment, see you later, and I'm out. But what was that process, especially being in your 20s, which is a really overwhelming time for really anybody, but you're in your 20s and you are this unique figure. You have a commanding presence. Jurassic Park is really how we're getting educated again on literal dinosaurs. What was that path like to where you really wanted to go and turn into a career?
Well, I mean, to me, and again, this sounds a little bit more like kind of book fodder, but I mean, everything's a choice. You have a choice to be happy. You have a choice to be sad. You have a choice to what you want to do. You can succumb or you can break out. You can take risk. You can be whatever it is. And I think in my case, I just kind of knew this thing was kind of calling me. It was just.
But I'm saying, what does that look like?
Well, I mean, I just knew, like, I just couldn't get away from it. I mean, I just always liked it. I was just always lit up by it. And I kind of knew I would go down that real corporate business road, and it just wasn't for me, and I wasn't happy. And eventually I thought, okay, maybe I want to do something that makes me happy. I could be miserable, and it wasn't going to be about how much success I had or how much money I made. I was not happy. And I wanted to go do something that gave me a little fulfillment. I mean, life's short, and I think, I'm very fortunate, I know that, but it's a much better ride if you can do something that you're passionate about. And, one of my biggest blessings in life is being able to actually have a career and make a living doing what would be my hobby. How great is that? I mean, I'm going to go all over the place, but that's part of the reason we understand each other. We're kind of in that space. I went down to the Brazos Valley Museum of Natural History yesterday and picked up a 20-foot-long section of a hadrosaur dinosaur tail that has mummified skin impressions and T-Rex bite marks. I'm winning, okay? I'm winning. Okay, later in this podcast, you're going to hold a piece of the moon. You're cooler than all your friends. Okay, we're right now. You and I are hitting the apex. Okay, so we're not buttoned to get on base. We're hitting home runs out of the stadium.
In the World Series Game 7.
Yes, exactly. So it's pretty cool.
So, but
gotta admit.
But again, there's a part of me that's jealous. And these podcasts, ironically, they've changed my life, and it's given me the ability to pivot. Where, I thought what I was doing, and I feel like God was calling me for a long time, and I think I finally had my epiphany when our daughter was born, where I was like, man, what am I doing every single day? Just getting my butt kicked for a living. There's got to be a way to go and honestly make some edits to my life. And it was really kind of right around the time when I met you, and I had lunch with you. And again, we have so much in common, and we have nothing in common, which makes us, kindred spirit, but
absolutely,
you've just done it to the next level. So maybe walk us through, again, what you're doing is you're the only guy that does what you do on planet Earth, right?
Well, there's a handful of people that do what I do in terms of doing this for an auction company. They're basically certainly based in different states and for the most part overseas.
Yeah, but you're doing it for the 800-pound gorilla.
Well, I'm certainly doing it for the American version. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Heritage we have 40 different categories, and, we're dominant in so many collectibles and everything. I think we did about $1.4 billion in auctions last year. So, yeah, we're a gorilla.
Yeah, that bird will fly.
There's no question about it. So
do you remember the first time, whether it's at Heritage or at the previous companies, the first time that you had a moment you're like, okay, this cannot be real life, whether you were holding the dinosaur tail or a piece of the moon, or maybe it was even real life kryptonite? What was the first moment where you just had to take a step back and be like, this is a joke, this is my job, and I'm so glad that I took the jump from corporate, vanilla America to what I'm doing now?
Well, there's a lot of them, but here it is. Here's going to be, if you want the goosebump moment, here it is. Okay, so when I was 9, my grandfather gave me that book. 18 years later, I went to my first major gem and mineral show, and there's a whole sort of trade show level of mineral and fossil and meteorite dealers out there. The two major shows in America are the Tucson show in February, where I'm about to leave to go to here on Thursday, and the Denver show in September. First show I went to was the Denver show in, I believe, 1992. Fred Poe, author of said book, was out there, and somebody had fortunately told me to take the book with me. I thought I was going to be identifying minerals. No, they said, go talk to that old guy over there in the tweed jacket. He signed the book back to me with appreciation to Grandpa, Fred Poe, 1992. So when my place is burning down, what do you think I'm grabbing going out the door?
Book, baby.
The book. Okay, so that was seminal, where in kind of homage to my grandfather, I had then met the author of this book, and I'm going to this show to buy minerals and fossils for this company. I mean, that's kind of where I really knew it tweaked. And the interesting thing where I want to kind of take us on this little tangent is it took a long time to get there, and after that, there that company went away, and then I was doing my own stuff, but getting back in other things. It took a while, and I'm kind of at Heritage, and everybody's like, boy, wouldn't that have been great if you had that job at Heritage back in the day? I'm like, well, it wasn't available to me back in the day, and I wouldn't have known what to do with it. So the one thing I do want to say to you and anybody who might be listening is, everybody knows Mitch Albom from Tuesdays with Maury. Okay, he also wrote a book called Timekeeper, and the whole concept is that basically we don't choose time chooses us. Okay, so the deal is, the things, I'm where I am supposed to be when I'm supposed to be there. I couldn't have accelerated it. I couldn't have, there's a magic to sort of being in your own space in your own time. And I kind of think that was about. I couldn't have made this happen quicker. And again, if I hadn't done all the weird things, majoring in business instead of geology, leaving the job at the law firm to nothing, to, trying stuff on my own. You have to have those things. They all build towards you. I mean, we're a collection of every experience we've had up until this point, and it's okay to fail, and it's okay to take risks, and it's okay to not understand where you're going. You might actually get there quicker.
I remember you telling me that at lunch. We had a really entertaining lunch, and it was talking about his wine company he owns, some cereal, some ice cream, a little bit of everything. But then he gave me these nuggets where literally I went back and I shared that with my office in our little social media group. It's you do not choose time chooses you. But again, it goes back to a loaded question I asked you a minute ago about, taking that actual step, which I think that shows a different kind of fearlessness. And I know that I didn't do it for a really, really long time. And I think, again, you epitomize this. Okay, so back to your career. Back to how do you couple the fanboy with the employee, like the leader? What was the first moment where somebody maybe sent something on consignment to auction and you're just freaking out, but you're having to control yourself?
Well, I mean, it really depends. I mean, part of the thing about talking about selling here a little bit is, when I first went to work for the Discovery Store, I'm working in a store in the Dallas Galleria, making a slight hourly wage after just, getting a double major at UT and an MBA from SMU. Okay, that's not exactly how it's supposed to go, even to the chagrin of my father at the time. But I was in there and they were selling incredible stuff. They had this petrified wood coffee table in front of a fireplace set up, and they had cases of minerals and fossils, and I already obviously knew a good bit about that stuff, and I became super salesman. They couldn't control me because I would just go up to people and start talking about them. They're like, oh my gosh, I got to buy that, and I still think that who's still a dear friend of mine, but Rick Rauder, who still owns that company, I think will tell you that 1 month of May of 92 or whenever that I worked in the store was still the highest grossing month they've ever had that was non-seasonal. And that was just I've never even been a salesperson before, but it wasn't about that. It was about converting my passion. I'll tell you, if you talk to me about minerals, fossils, or meteorites, you're going to love them. I don't care what you know or what you think you like. You're coming to the dark side in a hurry because
that's a perfect segue. I think why don't we share a little bit? This is the first time we've done a true show and tell.
Absolutely.
What do we have here?
Well, I mean, just because we kind of did it, we'll go ahead and we won't bury the lead. So take this piece, hold this in your hand. That is a piece of the moon, brother. So now you are the man. So I'll be clear.
So what is this called?
Well, it's a lunar meteorite. Okay, I want to be clear about one little caveat here, especially for somebody who is the director of natural history for an auction company. Moon rocks that are picked up by Apollo astronauts are illegal to own privately. They're belong to the government and they're administered by NASA. This is a lunar meteorite. It is a piece of the moon, but what happens is an asteroid's flying through space, hits the lunar surface and compresses it into basically a new sedimentary rock. That's a feldspathic breccia, meaning it's a conglomerate of other similar rocks that are put together. That's how sedimentary rocks are formed. They're pieces of other rocks compressed together. The impact forces some of these pieces off into space, and some of them fortunately make it to Earth and land here as a meteorite. Now, this was classified.
Did you find that?
No. I got this from a dealer. But what happens is we compare this material to what the astronauts brought back, and then a scientist at a university typically will classify. There's a thing called the Meteoritical Bulletin, or the Met Bull, online, and you can look up any meteorite and tell you all about it, who owns it, what's it consist of, and what. So this will have an NWA, or a Northwest Africa number. If you think about it, there are a lot of places where meteorite recovery tends to be a little more commonplace. If you find a black or a brown stone sitting atop the Stark Sahara Desert or the Antarctica ice or something, it pretty much has to be a meteorite because it can't really be anything else. So, and now that there's so much money associated with this, I mean, lunar meteorites can be worth over $100 a gram. So, I mean, this right here is a $30,000 rock.
No way.
So, I mean, there's an incentive for even local people there who know what it's worth to find these, take them into town, make a phone call to some rich American, and next thing you know, I'm handing this to Rogers Healy over this table. So
this is my gift today? Is it
boy, if only if it was.
A piece of the moon? But what's next?
Well, Mars is called the red planet, but it's actually green.
No way.
So that is part of a Martian shergotite, which is a certain kind of Martian meteorite. There's 3 kind of varieties of
Why
Mars
is my
rocks.
tendency to smell it?
Well, I mean, everybody thought the moon was made of cheese too, right? No, people smell and lick
This
rocks
is
all the time.
Mars?
That's Mars, yeah. So it's a little piece of Mars.
No
Mars
way.
is even more.
Are these yours?
No, they belong to Heritage.
My gosh.
But this is even more of a rarity than the lunar stuff. But pretty crazy, same kind of thing.
How do you? So that had to fall from Mars?
Yeah, it's some big interspace collision had to knock this off of Mars, and it had to get to Earth, which is pretty crazy. But these are highly collectible. And next
How
time,
much is that Mars piece worth?
that piece is probably, well, it's almost equivalent. That piece is probably worth about. I mean, it's almost worth 30 grand, but we'll call it 15 grand. But it's size wise, there's a little bit of a catch up there on it.
Well, what else we got?
This is pretty cool. Everybody, you were talking about other movies. I like the movie Megalodon, even though it's extremely campy.
I'm
Megalodon
afraid I'm going to drop it.
Okay, well, this is a megalodon tooth. Effectively, it's not directly, but we'll call it an ancestral great white. And if you think a great white tooth is about 2 inches long, a contemporary modern great white, these teeth go up to 7 inches. They have razor sharp serrations on the sides.
That's real?
Yeah, and these were, there were rows and rows of these. So as it would bite and break off on its prey, there'd be another one to fill its space. They conjecture that these sharks could have been 45 to 50 feet long. So you're talking about a shark, a great white shark size of a school bus. I mean, how crazy is that? So pretty impressive. But
How big are great whites?
20 to 22 feet max recorded
twice
on
the
his
size?
Easily. And that's a mathematical extrapolation. They could be even bigger than that. So these were the apex predator of the ancient ocean beyond belief. They were just killing and eating machines. I mean, these things were just so efficient.
How do you
Crazy.
get someone? So someone sends that to y'all to sell it?
Yeah, we take anything on consignment. So there are people out there digging for these things. The interesting thing is, even though they were obviously, they were from the ocean in origin, most of the better teeth are found in river deposits, because in the actual ocean, things are going to get, turned over and beat up all the time. But in river deposits, you can pull these right out of the mud, and they're in pretty pristine condition. I mean, if you see the preserved enamel, the root, the little burlette here, I mean, that tooth is near perfect, and you just don't find that, especially in larger sizes.
Can I ask how much that is?
It's probably a 3 grand tooth.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, there were
Do
a
you
lot
think
of shark
anybody would
teeth.
buy that to turn into a necklace?
Not that size, but I've seen it done with more
seriously?
reasonable ones. Yeah,
that-
even a guy your size, that would look a little
maybe.
70s discount or disco, whatever it would be for sure. So
Is that kryptonite?
this thing.
Is that from Planet Krypton?
This is a green beryl. It's just a large gemstone. We deal in Heritage has a very vibrant jewelry department for things that are set in jewelry, but we just kind of do cut stones sometimes. So green beryl is basically, chemically, it's very similar to an emerald, but it's not dark enough to be considered an emerald. And we just like some people will collect big stones just as they are, like they would collect minerals. So, kind of a neat sort of deal. That's really more of a crazy thing just because it's big. But, cut and faceted stones. And with anything, when you're doing something to it, you got to start with a much larger piece than you're going to end up with.
Well, how much is that worth?
Oh, I don't know. A stone like this is probably worth about $8,000 to $10,000.
Oh my God.
If it was an emerald, of course it would be, we'd be more in the higher price things. And then here's a gold nugget. And gold is something that I find
it's so
fascinating.
heavy.
Yeah. Well, it's a metal, What's great about this is, nuggets are, what I love to tell people about is think about this. This is so fascinating to me. Gold is only about 2% of all gold that's ever been mined exists in nugget form, because gold is always refined into jewelry, into coins and things. Gold, humans melt gold down, okay? So it's only 2% of gold even exists in nugget form. A 1 ounce gold nugget is as rare as a 5-carat diamond, and people don't get their head around that either. And I'll say it wrong.
How many ounces is that?
This is, I don't know, this is probably, I hadn't weighed this piece or whatever, but it's a few ounces. And, gold's, almost 2,000 an ounce right now, just at melt. And again, because of the rarity, that's a collectible thing. And I know one of the things you want to talk about was the giant Alaskan gold nugget that we sold at Heritage at the end of last year. And, it was the largest gold nugget ever found in the state of Alaska. And you think about how associated Alaska is with gold mining and stuff like that is pretty insane. It was 21.6 ounces. About 2/3 of it was gold because it mixed with the mineral quartz. Gold often occur with quartz. It's about the size of your head. And Heritage realized a $750,000 value on that, which is pretty neat.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was crazy because a guy who was prospecting, and at this point he was actually using like a bulldozer, saw this piece over there and thought, that doesn't look right, went down to get it. And when he found it, he didn't know what to do, so he hid it under a tree and then ran into the nearest town to kind of tell people and confirm what he had. It's funny how some of these stories get, so interesting too. What people come to us, and of course it's typically they've inherited something, or of course they found something of actual value at a garage sale, or they've dug something themselves. I mean, it doesn't always happen, but once in a while there's some really delightful stories behind the things we get to deal with at Heritage.
Wow. Well, we got one more piece.
We do. This is probably one of the most unique pieces of petrified wood that you're going to see. People know petrified wood that is from the Pacific Northwest that has all the browns and creams. It looks like wood. People are into the colorful rainbow wood from Arizona that they make into bookends and tables because it's colorful. This is called cola wood, which is short for chrysocolla. Chrysocolla, like malachite and azurite, are a secondary copper mineral, and this gives it this beautiful turquoise color. So this comes from Turkey, which is a pretty exotic location for petrified wood, but that's how we do it. So again, I can't get away from the nerddom of the science, but people who don't understand petrified wood. So wood is porous like your bones. So let's talk about the Arizona wood, which is so popular. So you have these giant coniferous, or effectively pine trees, that were living 200 million years ago in Arizona when the dinosaurs were starting to cruise around Wyoming and Montana and stuff, and Utah. So these trees die and fall over. They go into a river, and they log jam up, and they get covered with 2,000 feet of overburden. And the important thing is, for most things to fossilize, they need to get buried very quickly so that wind and water and animals don't act on them. It's hard to have something be fossilized. It takes something. So when they're covered in this overburden, hydrothermal currents come through, which is basically water with chemicals, and through what's called capillary attraction. Everybody remembers from school biology, capillary in your body. The porous nature of the wood absorbs the chemicals, and cell by cell replaces the original wood into agate or rock. I mean, how crazy is that story? I mean, just the science behind how this is, and now you have what was once wood is a rock, and it just absolutely can be cut and polished into some of those beautiful stuff you have.
Is it even fair to ask you how you find balance between your work and your life? Because there's overlap is substantial.
Well, yeah, in my case, what I do is a large portion of who I am, certainly, and I kind of, as my hobby overlaps with this, and I mean my involvement with the AAPS we talked about, which is a group that sort of oversees the commercial dealers. I said I'm about to go to the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show, which is one of my favorite times of the year. To me, it's kind of a dysfunctional family reunion. Most of the people I deal with in this industry are friends first. It's almost just icing on the cake. We get to do business together. I will be running around with people who dig up dinosaurs and collect meteorites and import fossils from Morocco and go, dive in rivers for shark teeth. I mean, it's pretty amazing. They're really the Indiana Jones people. I've found a little more kind of, if you will, sophisticated way to make a living. I don't have to get as dirty as they do what I do, but it's pretty crazy. I mean, we make, we put a lot of pride in the catalogs we put out at Heritage, and Heritage gives us a lot of latitude and resources. And as I said, it's how crazy that I told you, I spent the day yesterday down in Bryan, Texas, getting a mummified dinosaur tail. I mean, this is crazy, right? And I'll, I know we're kind of winding down. One of the craziest things, when you come next time to Heritage, and I'm going to get you to come out for the preview for our March auction, we just brought in a 17 kilogram, that's 37 and a half pounds, converted to U.S., of the moon. It's one of the largest pieces of the moon in existence, and certainly one of the largest pieces.
Moon or
well, lunar meteorite. Supposed to be a lunar. But this is
legally you can't sell.
But this was found in the country of Mali in 2021 by camel shepherds. Can't make this stuff up. But it's gorgeous. It's it's the size of almost the size of a basketball, and it looks great. And I mean, we'll have videos of it. It'll be on display at Heritage. And I mean, it's amazing when you think about. There's probably well less than 1,000 pounds of lunar material on the Earth, whether it was from astronauts or Voyager missions or lunar meteorites or whatever, and we're talking about almost 40 pounds of that. I mean, this is a pretty neat finite resource with an incredible story, and what a trip it made coming from space to get here. I mean,
how much is that going to sell for you?
Well, we've got an estimate on that of $800,000 and up. I mean, that it really should go for well over $1 million.
Oh my!
It really really, but it's
a good day to be a camel.
Well, it is.
Camel shepherd.
It is, but I also go back to one of the most interesting things. This is a hard sell category for me because unlike the stuff that at Heritage, like sports, comics, coins, things that are commoditized, things that are graded, those are easy. Art's a little more understood. This is everybody loves this, but then they go, but am I going to buy it? Am I going to invest in it? What am I going to do with it? That's cool, but where do I put it? It's a really harder kind of thing. But I go the other way in my mind, and I look at that, and yeah, we can talk about how lunar material could be, north of $100 a gram or whatever. But it's like it's almost a 40-pound piece of the moon. How is that not priceless, right? I mean, it really, and that's what gets me too, because having the business background I do, and I think that's why I'm good at my job. I have a duality. I understand the business and the making money and how to do the deals and all the stuff about that. I'm, formally trained in that way, but my passion and my love of the material and understanding the material, and it's not even that I know a little more about the scientific aspects of some of these than, somebody else who might walk in here. But again, even if you didn't like petrified wood or megalodon teeth or lunar meteorites and you're sitting across from me, you do now.
Fan. Best advice you've ever received?
Wow. That's a really, really good question. I should have thought about that. That's a good question. It probably was something my dad told me once, but I actually don't know what it was, if that makes sense. Well, no, I mean, my dad was kind of a very, very, very conservative, very quiet man, but every once in a while he'd kind of say one of those zingers that would sort of stick with you. I mean, to put it trite, just because it's funny, of course, it would be buy low, sell high. I mean, that's kind of where he went, but there's always bigger implications of stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, and I love that. I mean, like I said, when I really first started at Heritage, is about 2013. This is almost 10 years ago. They used to have this thing called Second Tuesdays, and in the Fine and Deck Arts area, which my department's under, they would have guest speakers come in, and we'd invite our VIP clients and people to come, and we'd have a little kind of wine and cheese thing, and you have a little nice lecture. And they asked me to lecture, and I was nervous. I really had no idea. I didn't kind of realize that sort of the stage was something I actually enjoyed once I got into it. I really I drove off that energy. And, that's when I first gave that talk, A Boy in a Book and a Rock. But to look out there in the audience, and my father's passed now, but I mean, my father and my mother were both there. And I'm thinking about my grandfather, and some of my friends are there, and the people that I worked with, where I finally landed in a department where I have the passion. Is those are the kind of moments where you really go, it's bigger and better than you think it is, and it's much more important. I hope I never make a decision solely because of money or solely because of career or whatever, because there's too much. Life's bigger than that. Life's bigger than that. So you just have to you just have to see the forest for the trees.
I like that. What about the advice you'd give to somebody that's listening to this that has that inner Craig, whether it's with meteorites and fossils, or it's something that has nothing to do with what we've talked about? What's the advice you'd give them?
Well, it's twofold. I'd say first of all, listen to that voice. If you have a passion and you know what it is, you are blessed, and you need to work real hard to try and go that way if you think it's going to result in the kind of fulfillment that someone like you and I have. Okay, that's it. The second thing I would say, though, is you can't fake it. One thing I see is they'll hit certain milestones in their life and say, I'm gonna learn to play the guitar, or I'm gonna start getting into wine, or you can't really you have it or you don't. It's in there. I didn't choose to make paleontology and mineralogy and stuff. It was there, it's just there. I didn't sit there and say, I want to learn the piano, or I want to do, you talked about the winery. Yes, I have a very minimal investment. I wish I was the owner of a very minimal investment in a little California winery. And I do love wine, but
Franzia?
I didn't know, no box wine for me. But I literally just it's just one of those things. But I would say this is part of your thing. Be true to your authentic self. That's really what it is. Because the bottom line is you don't have to sell out to do what you want. You don't have to sell. And I have a lot of friends who are much more successful than me, whatever, but I can almost sometimes feel their envy of, they might have the bigger house and the nicer job and this and kind of stuff, but they're, when you sit there and say, what'd you like again? What'd you do yesterday? I went to a museum and got a mummified dinosaur bone. People are like, what? what are you carrying around? That's a piece of the moon. Like, are you kidding me? You know, I mean, at a cocktail party, I almost always win. You know, look, once in a while there's an astronaut or a rodeo clown, but other than that, I'm usually pretty much. It tends to make me more interesting. I'll put it that way.
I love it. I'm about to ask you a question that I'm confident you've never been asked before.
Oh boy, here's danger zone.
If you were a dinosaur,
yes,
what would you be and why? Have you been asked this question?
No, I haven't. I do get asked a lot of strange questions. It's funny. I used to be in my opinion, the world's greatest guest speaker to schools. And I go to like fifth grade and stuff, and man, I would be, because it's not about me, it's about the props. Same thing. I mean, I would just.
Well, I'm in fifth grade mentally.
Yeah,
so
right. But I mean, you start showing a kid a piece of dinosaur, they don't care what you're talking about. You know, it doesn't matter at all. But I mean, I think that's kind of it. I mean, in a weird way, you know, the two most iconic dinosaurs, and you still see this today, you even see it in sales, are, you know, T-Rex on the theropod or the meat-eating side, and Triceratops, you know, on the other side because of the horns and the frill and everything. I mean, they're memorialized in movies and cartoons and everything. I kind of like the big sauropods, the big, you know, giant, what we think of as a dinosaur. I mean, I'm old school. I like a dinosaur that looks like a dinosaur. So I want it to be big and reptilian and whatever. Just like with meteorites, I like the big honking iron meteorites because they look like a meteorite. You know, I didn't bring in, you know, one of those because the weight and everything is crazy. But I mean, the lunar and Martian material is unbelievably. It's great and it's collectible. But when people think about a meteorite, they want to see a big chunk of metal that they can envision, you know, flying through the atmosphere and hitting a car and leaving a giant hole in the ground and that kind of stuff. So I think I would be a big sauropod dinosaur, probably like an Apatosaurus or, you know, one of those kind of things. Although, you know, you're not going to be the top of the chain. So there's a big risk about that and kind of hard to live and how much you have to eat and all that kind of stuff. But I would be a big giant dinosaur if I was a dinosaur.
Bonus question. What if they named a dinosaur after you? What would it be called?
Well, it's interesting in this community, and again, I'm not an active person. I've written a lot of articles, but I mean, I'm not publishing science or doing anything like that. I'm not actively digging. I've done some stuff, whatever. But in our business, having a species named after you is kind of the holy grail of ego. So I am sort of coming up with some kind, you know. And normally you've got, you know, when we talk about stuff, you have genus and species. Okay, so normally, you know, I'm thinking of some kind of dinosaur, you know, it would be like, you know, and you want to do something with your name. So, well, Prehistoric is a funny thing people joke about, but my thing would be something like a Diplodocus Kissickii, because, you know, normally you have kind of two eyes on the end of things to give it some of that science. So I think there would be something out there. There would be there would be Diplodocus Kissickii or, you know, Tyrannosaurus Kissickii. So something that I could put Kissick on the last name of would be kind of cool. I just
connected the Kissickii.
Yeah, that's kind of how people do it. So
wow.
Yeah, crazy, huh?
Last question. How do we best support you? How do we find you, whether it's social media, whether it's in the auctions? What do we do to be a Craig fan even more so than we are today?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, I love this, and I love to spread sort of the gospel of paleontology and all this kind of stuff that we do. I mean, Heritage is, you know, right here in Dallas, and, you know, I don't know if people know that, where, you know, we just, in the last couple of years, we moved right out by DFW Airport. We have previews, we have auctions all the time. I mean, I would love people who are interested in this to reach out to me. I don't do a lot of social media. I think Heritage might as a company. You know, I'm old school. It's kind of passed me by. Like I said, I actually do own a flip phone, so it's kind of hard for me. But I mean, I would, you know, support is I would love for people to know that. Not always, you know, natural history, people know, they go to museums, and so I don't know if they know that it's attainable out there and it can be purchased out there. And, you know, obviously, I do everything by the book. Even as president of AAPS, we have a code of ethics. We are into ethical, you know, preservation, collection, stuff like that. But one of our taglines is a fossil not collected is a fossil not protected. As soon as a fossil starts weathering out, if you don't collect it, it's gone, lost to science. There's a lot of people in academia who think, well, you shouldn't sell fossils or only scientists should study. So, well, the amateur people add so much to the lexicon of paleontology that's a little bit ridiculous. So, you know, I mean, every fossil shouldn't be in a museum. And these things can be sold. And my hope, too, is that ultimately they would be. I hope whoever buys this dinosaur tail repatriates it to another museum. I actually hope a large benefactor here in Dallas would buy that meteorite and give it to the Perot. The Perot is an outstanding world-class collection of minerals, incredible dinosaurs, most of which are Texas-focused. They don't have any meteorites. Well, start your meteorite collection at the Pro by buying one of the best meteorites that's ever been offered for sale. You know, hey, I'll guarantee you, if you have a friggin' 40-pound piece of the moon, people are going to be impressed when they walk in there, no matter what else.
Especially if you're wearing it like a necklace.
There it is. Yeah.
Email address. Are we able to give your email address out?
Absolutely. The best way to get to me is very simple, CraigK@ha.com.
How about that?
CraigK@ha.com. CraigK@ha.com, and that will get right to me. I do my best to reach out and answer, but no question is a silly question. No request is too out there. I mean, you know, look up Heritage Auctions, ha.com. And as you know, we've got incredible music memorabilia that you love in all kinds of categories. It's a great company. We're growing. We're vibrant. We're, you know, always ready to help people. If they've got property that they want to monetize and they don't know what to do with it. I mean, we're the group that sold the $9 million gold doubloon, and we sold the $12 million Mickey Mantle baseball card. And I mean, Heritage is your go-to place for any high-level collectible, and we're, you know, right here in your backyard.
I love it. I am going to ask you one more question.
Yes, sir.
Describe yourself in one word, and then we wrap it up. One word.
Complex. Because I'm not.
One word.
Well, only because we're just all across the thing. You know, I'm a contradiction in terms, but I can't get that down to one word. So
complex. Mm-hmm. This was awesome.
It was awesome.
This is exactly what I thought it was going to be in the greatest way possible.
Right. Well, and this is exactly, I had no idea what this was going to be. So I almost want to say this is exactly not what I thought this was going to be. But then again, there we go. So it's good.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And I hope y'all can just get an ounce of that passion that Craig just exudes as much as anybody I've ever met. So thanks for coming today, and thanks for sharing your story.
Well, no, I appreciate it. And people, you know, come out to Heritage and see the dinosaur tail, see the lunar meteorite. It's pretty. They're game changers.
Love it.
Thanks. Glad. Hey, I hope we can do it again.